to see if my glasses look okay. Hello again. Welcome back to my channel. This video today is going to be kind of a fun one. We're going to be going over the books that I read in the month of December 2024. So this was a month of some growth for me. I branched out into some different genres and different things like that. So I feel like this one is good. I read some good books. I read some books that were just okay. I do have to give a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm going to try to stay away from spoilers, but the first 3 books that I read were the last 3 books in a series. So while I won't hop directly into spoiler territory, it's going to be really hard for me to talk about what happens within those books without maybe giving some stuff away. The first 3 books I'm going to talk about it's a little bit of a spoiler alert. So just so you're warned, the first 3 books that I read were the last 3 books in the Throne of Glass series by Toby. Anyways, yeah, so let's go ahead and hop right into it. So like I said, the first 3 books that I read were the last 3 books in the Throne of Glass series. So starting off, we have Empire of Storms. My personal thoughts, I kind of touched on this already in the books that I read in 2024. This book in particular, it's still a good book. It has a killer cliffhanger that I would have hated to have read that book when it came out versus, now it's a finished series, so I could just hop right into the rest of the series. The cliffhanger was really killer. You have a lot of action with the characters in this. We just kind of, we're hopping into, it's like phase 4 of this grand scheme that's going on. So we've got pirates, we've got witches, we've got wyverns, we've got all sorts of things, and they're all kind of starting to come together. They're journeying all across distant lands, and so yeah, it's a lot going on. It's very fun to read about, but I think just back to back, I was kind of getting a little burnt out by like 75% of the way through the book. I really love Manon and Dorian though. I think throughout this book, they were the couple that I was following the most, and I love Dorian's growth. I feel like when he started out, he was just this cute little prince, and just to see him kind of grow into his power and things like that. So loved the book. It wasn't my favorite in the series just because it got a little action heavy, and I will say, I know now, I didn't when I was reading it, but I believe that this book and Tower of Dawn, there's like a tandem read that you can do, and I can totally see how if you do that, it kind of breaks up the political intrigue with like this constant action, because they were 2 very separate books. I didn't do that, so take that with a grain of salt. If you choose to read this series and you choose to do the tandem read, that would probably solve that problem for you, but that was my experience. I would rate this book a 3.5 out of 5, 3.5 out of 5 stars, just because I did get a little burnt out, and it wasn't my favorite in the series. Still a good book though. The next book was Tower of Dawn. I think I have a bit of I don't want to say a unique opinion, but maybe not the majority of people feel this way. I actually preferred Tower of Dawn over Empire of Storms. I liked the character development. I'm a very character-driven person, and so seeing Chaol grow the way that he did and kind of learning about Irene and just all that sort of thing, also seeing just each of the characters, they each had their own little development throughout this book, and so while it wasn't quite as action-heavy, it was a little bit more court-heavy and things like that. Still a good book, and I personally really liked it. So that's just me. Again, it's same timeline as Empire of Storms, so there's that. This one I ranked as a 4 out of 5 stars, just because it kept me more engaged than Empire of Storms did. And again, really liked it. It made me, because I kind of didn't love Chaol at the beginning of the book, I grew to appreciate him a lot more afterwards. So that is Tower of Dawn. Last, just to kind of wrap this section up, sorry, just moving my notes, but just to wrap this section up with the Throne of Glass series that I finished in December, Kingdom of Ash. This book, it was a great ending to a good story. Great ending to a great story. Definitely, it was a culmination of so many different plot lines. After the cliffhanger that you see in Empire of Storms, I was more than ready to start this book just because I had been waiting patiently to find out what was happening. I feel like they did a really good job Sarah J. Maas did a really good job of capturing the healing process. That would be so difficult to go through. And I think still the main character, just because it's a book and they have to, but they were able to overcome that a lot easier than maybe a normal person would. I don't know that anyone would be truly the same after that. But I feel like she did a really good job kind of like helping us go through that with the character, and you just really felt for her. Very war heavy. That's not my favorite thing in books. It was kind of the same thing with Aquatar. Book 3 I did not like as nearly as much as the first 2 books, simply because it was super war heavy specifically. I don't even necessarily mind the political intrigue. It's just the constant like battle scenes and the war scenes that I personally really struggle with. So I think by the time I got to this point, I was reading Kingdom of Ash. I was ready to be done with the series, but I was happy that I read it. I really loved the journey that I went on. There were some incredible moments by some of the characters where you're like, let's freaking go. You deserve this. I feel like it was a really great ending to a really good, long story with lots of plots and development along the way. So I really liked it. I rated this one 3.5 out of 5 just because of the war chapters and just because of that sort of thing. It was really hard for me to get through those. But that is Kingdom of Ash, and that is the end of the Throne of Glass series. Everything else that I read is either standalones or book 1 in a series, so that I don't have to worry quite as much about like the spoiler heavy explanations going into it, just so you know. So that is that. After I finished reading that series, because it's so long and the books are so big and it's just, there's so much going on, I was kind of ready for something a little bit different. And by different, I mean totally different. So the next book that I picked up was actually The Unhoneymooners. It was a huge left turn, and essentially what happens, you're following Ethan and Olive. Olive's twin sister and Ethan's younger brother are getting married. And that happens at the very beginning of the book. They get married, but at the wedding, everyone comes down with a nasty stomach bug and is like projectile vomiting everywhere. But Olive and Ethan, because Olive has some dietary restrictions and Ethan hates buffets, they both didn't partake of the food at the reception. They had something kind of separate. So these 2 people are the only 2 people that do not get this nasty stomach bug. So because of this, and the couple has a honeymoon that they won and it's free, but because of that it's non-transferable, they can't change the dates, anything like that, they ask Ethan and Olive to go on this honeymoon for them. They're like, we want someone to go enjoy it, because we definitely won't be. So you 2 go. So Ethan and Olive go on this honeymoon together. The kicker, number 1, Ethan and Olive detest each other. The kicker, number 2, because it's a free honeymoon and because they want it, there's very specific rules, and if they are caught lying that they are not who they say they are, they will get kicked out of the honeymoon and they'll have to pay for the whole thing. So they have to act like they like each other and they hate each other. And they're going on this honeymoon together. And that's kind of that's the premise of the story. It's a good enemies to lovers. It's a fun rom-com, kind of forced proximity, one bed are some of the tropes that are in this one. Very fun story, and it was exactly what I wanted after this big epic fantasy story that I had just come out of, right? Like, I just really needed something lighthearted to kind of cleanse the palate afterwards, and it did exactly that. I think the biggest thing for me, I don't have beef with the ending. I just did not love how some of the final events played out, but I loved the story going up to that point. I really enjoyed the characters. They had some really fun banter. So I rated this one as a 4 out of 5 stars, just because it was exactly what I wanted at that time. Like, it felt so good to read and it was just so fun. And to me, my husband teases me so bad because to me this was a huge genre shift. I have stuck almost exclusively to fantasy romance for the past year or 2. Like, every book that I've read has been something to that effect. So reading a contemporary rom-com felt like a really big shift to me. Even though it's still romance, it's still kind of the same idea. So he teases me that I wasn't branching out, I was twigging out. But it was big to me. So that is The Unhoneymooners. Lots of fun. The next book that I read after that, at this point we were getting close to Christmas time. So we were right around the holidays, you know, ramping up for all that sort of thing. And I just wanted something fun. Again, I was enjoying this 0.5 degree shift in genres, so to speak. And I wanted to kind of explore that a little bit more. So I picked up a book. It's literally called Holiday Romance, and very low stakes book. Essentially, you're following these two characters, and the whole premise of their relationship is that every year they get on a plane together and they travel from Chicago, where they're from, all the way over to Ireland for the holidays. And that's kind of how they met up. 10 years ago, they were on the same plane. They had a mutual friend. They sat next to each other because of that. And then each year for the next 10 years, they kind of keep in touch, but mostly they like will travel together home for the holidays and that sort of a thing. And so the story itself is following them on this 10th year, and they're trying to get home. But you get little snippets of year 1, year 2, year 3, and like how their friendship has built, and what will it become from there? We don't know. It was very low stakes. It was a fun rom-com. The banter was a lot of fun, and you do feel, you're just so happy for them. It's a very cozy holiday romance. Like, the name speaks for itself, you know what I mean? There were, I don't want to say there were plot holes, but it was just kind of like not the craziest story that was put together. I also feel like at the very end there was a little bit of a massive wrench that was thrown into the storyline at like 90% of the way through the book, and you're just kind of like, okay, you know, that's fine. But it's a really cute story. I liked it a lot. Again, I rated it 3.5 out of 5. Did great. It wasn't my total favorite in the world, but I felt great for that Christmas time story. So that is Holiday Romance. I have, it looks like 2 books left that I read. So I believe this next book, it's not a fantasy. It's not really Regency. I still don't know exactly what genre this fits into, because it's not like princes and princesses, but they're wearing ball gowns. They're doing, it kind of feels like Bridgerton vibes, but in a completely made up world with like new countries and emperors and like that sort of a thing. But this book is called The Winter's Curse. It was the first book in a trilogy. I still haven't read the second 2. So if you know what that genre is called, let me know, because I don't think it's Regency. It's not historical fiction, because it's not historical. I don't really know what it is. But anyways, you're following 2 characters. You're following Kestrel, you're following Aaron. Kestrel is the daughter of a general, a war general, in the country of Valeria. And Valeria has slowly but surely kind of been conquering the continent. They've been kind of absorbing countries as they go along, and they're doing it in the name of like making a better land, right? And 10 years before this book takes place, they conquered the Haran country, or the country named Haran, and essentially they literally like acquired the lands, and then all the people that were there, they gave them the option to become slaves or die. And so all these Harani people have since become slaves. They're being bought, they're being sold. When the story picks up, we've got Kestrel, who was just a young girl when all of that war was happening, but now she's a young adult, and she's still kind of trying to find her place in this world. Her dad is a war general who helped conquer these lands, so she's got lots of money and lots of power, but she doesn't really know how she feels about everything and just kind of where she's at. You know, she's young. But the story kind of starts when Kestrel accidentally maybe purchases this slave and doesn't really know what to do with him. She feels kind of uncomfortable with the whole situation, and so she kind of tries to ignore him. But there are certain rules that she has to follow, and she hates it. But anyways, so Aaron is the slave, and there's a lot of political intrigue. There's a lot of undermining the current conquerors. There's a lot of kind of things like this. You kind of see issues with the Harani people. You see issues within their little court that they have going on, kind of their Bridgerton type court that they've got. It was a fun story. I am very intrigued to see what they do with it. I'm very intrigued to see how it develops. I wasn't totally sold on it in book 1, but that doesn't mean I won't later. So I just kind of want to see where it develops. You also kind of learn that this slave isn't who you think he is. You kind of pick up that maybe he's been lying about a few things, that he's a lot more clever than he kind of makes himself out to be. It's a really good low spice romance type book. Got a really good plot, and I'm intrigued to see where the story goes, but who knows. Next thing, I'm so sorry by the way, the day that I'm filming this is my birthday, so I'm getting some little texts, and I'm hoping that they're not interfering with the video, and I might just cut this out if it's not, but if you can hear a little buzz, it's because my phone has my notes, and my phone is also buzzing with my family group chat right now, so let's just move on. Sorry. The last book that I read, and this is the one I'm actually super excited to talk about, because it wasn't a left turn genre-wise, but I never would have thought to look here. I never would have thought to try out a book like this, but I was on Reddit and I was going through, and someone somewhere was asking for a recommendation on what type of, or like a type of book that was a good, yearning, not necessarily enemies to lovers, slow burn romance. And someone recommended Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love, which is a fanfic book that was written by someone under the pen name Is This Self-Care. And I never would have thought to check out fanfiction. That's just not something that I've really been intrigued by before, things like that. But all of the comments of people who had read it said that it was better than a lot of the books, like published books that they've read recently, and so they had nothing but good things to say about it. So I figured, why not try it out, right? So I read Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love, and holy cow, it is so fun. Basically, you're following Draco and Hermione. Of course, it's a Hermione fanfic, right? But you're following Draco and Hermione 15 years after the war that happens in book 7, and there's a completely separate plot than the whole Harry Potter series. There is it's not a completely separate list of characters. You have new people that you know, and and old people that we love, but I am convinced that this person Is the Self-Care, they wrote under this pen name. I'm convinced that this is an established and well-decorated author that just really wanted to write and publish a story about Draco and Hermione. Understandably so, it's probably complicated if you have your own worlds or like your own books that you've been publishing and things like that, and to try to publish a fanfic under your name about already existing characters. I imagine that gets kind of dicey legally, and so they just wrote it under this pen name because the book is extremely well written. The banter is top tier. This is one of the best slow burn, like yearning books I've read in a really long time, to the point where it's almost masochistic. And I think they even make an author's note comment in one of the chapters where they're like, this isn't for your casual slow burn romance people. This is for those who are borderline masochistic and want to see like the slowest of burns. And it totally is. It's the length of a full-length novel. It was just such a fun read, and the plot was really fun. It was a really good story, and it feels very true to the characters that we knew in the previous series. So like I feel like this actually could have happened. It wasn't just some people dreaming up some crazy thing. But yeah, so that is Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love. This one I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was so fun. To me, Draco feels like Aaron Warner and Damien Bloodthorn mixed into 2 people. And I loved both of those people, so I love Draco even more, right? So it was a lot of fun to read. The reason I gave it 4.5 and not 5, when you do finally get to the point where they are together, the spice chapter is just not for me. I don't know the way it's written, I don't know exactly what it is, but it wasn't my favorite spice that I've read. And so it felt very well deserved, but it just wasn't like my favorite. But that's just a personal opinion, and I wouldn't let that deter you if you're deciding. Just know that there is spice. It is an adult book. It has lots of innuendos spattered all throughout the chapter when you get to there. Honestly, if you aren't into that, or if you know that's going to be an issue, you can kind of skip the chapter, or like I think there's an abridged version somewhere. But yeah, that's just my personal opinion. That's why I got 4.5 and not 5. But everything else about the book, top tier. And that brings us to the end of the books that I read for the month of December. And I've started a few more, and I'm really excited to kind of get in to those with you. But if you've read any of these books and you have thoughts about them, let me know in a comment down below. Anything you do to interact with this video helps me out a ton. I'm a new channel, and so any likes, any comments that you leave, following, turning on the notifications, those are all super helpful for me to know what type of videos you guys like, that sort of a thing. But yeah, I'm excited to hear your thoughts down below, and I will see you next time.